Good, thanks. It's great to be with you guys. It's also great to be back at the top of the AFC West. I've been really encouraged by the performance of the team over the last few weeks, particularly in Las Vegas. It was good to see the offense get back in sync. And then on the defensive side, the gradual improvement that we've made over the last 5 weeks has reminded me a little of the improvement the defense made in 2019. Obviously, we have a big game coming up this weekend, and then after the bye, we have a number of games against our AFC West opponents, which will be very important. And with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Is Jerry going to bring a trophy with him?
So I ran into Jerry about a month ago, and I reminded him that he needed to bring the trophy. We'll see if he follows through, but we plan on getting it back for sure.
Clark, when things weren't going well early in the season, Andy seemed to be, as usual, kind of a stabilizing force, stabilizing presence. How did you see that this time around? If you did you see that in him this time around, and can maybe pass along a story or two in that regard?
Well, you're exactly right. Andy, regardless of how the prior week has gone, I think is always the same coach. And I think that consistency is very important to the team, particularly when you're going through a difficult period. And as I reflected on it, I thought about the long career that Andy's had. He certainly has had seasons where his teams, have struggled early in the season and then been able to turn it around. And so it reminded me how lucky we are to have Andy and his experience in a situation like that.
Do you have any stories that maybe illustrate what you're talking about here?
He and I obviously speak every week, and he kept reminding me that we were not that far. Looking whether it was the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, and that the team was working really hard during the week, which he was encouraged by. He saw the guys wanting to get better, wanting to get it turned around, and felt that they would, and then obviously it came together last week.
How comforting is it for you as an owner to know you have that stability in the locker room to keep the troops focused?
Yeah, well, I can't say enough positive things about Andy, and we probably ought to extend it to his staff as well. That's a very experienced coaching staff with a lot of talent on it, a lot of people who've been in the league for a very long time. Steve Spagnuolo on the defensive side, obviously the first 5 weeks didn't go how he would have hoped or we as an organization. But he's a coach again who's been through these kind of battles, and he just kept emphasizing the fundamentals and helping the guys with the scheme, and we've seen the fruits of that over the last 5 weeks.
It's been out there for a while now. The Royals are exploring a downtown ballpark. What's your take on that, and how might it impact things over here for the Chiefs?
Yeah. So John Sherman was thoughtful enough to give us a heads up that they were going to make that announcement and that it was something that they're considering. Obviously, we've been connected to the Royals for almost 50 years now here at the sports complex. And so their decision on their long-term future will have an impact on us. We're going to watch as they go through the process, and at some point here in the next year or so, start thinking about what's next for the Chiefs from a stadium standpoint.
Is there anything that Clark, in terms of the stadium, is there anything that you envision or that you want to do, whether it involves the Royals or not in the near future?
Well, we think that GEHA Field at Arrowhead is still one of the finest stadiums in the National Football League, and the renovation that we completed about 11 or 12 years ago really brought the stadium into the top tier, back into the top tier in the National Football League. Obviously, things change, and the way fans want to consume the game and the kind of spaces that you need, those things change over time, and we're paying attention to that. We've had beautiful stadiums open now in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, And there'll be things when we get to the end of our lease here in 9 or so years that I'm sure that we'll want to incorporate into the stadium. One possibility will be another renovation of Arrowhead.
Clark, when you look at some of these other new stadiums, they have districts around them, so other stuff to do besides just go to the game. I know this is several steps away, but when the Royals talk about potentially moving downtown, would you envision something that, you know, would be more entertainment around here?
Yeah, one of the great things about the sports complex is how big it is, and that's created the opportunity for our fans to have the tremendous tailgate experience that they have before the game each week. So we're fortunate to have that kind of built-in experience already. Obviously, if the Royals weren't playing at the sports complex, it would open up more space and maybe allow us to do some different programming that we haven't done in the past.
We know that Patrick Mahomes' fiance Brittany has been involved in women's soccer around here, and Patrick has gotten involved with Sporting KC. I know that soccer's been important to your family. What's it been like to connect on that basis, owning an MLS team yourself, competition committee, and all that?
Patrick and I, earlier this year, when FC Dallas and Sporting KC were playing, we had some fun conversations before those games. Obviously, Sporting's having a great season, and I wish them the best in the playoffs. And just really want to commend both Patrick and Brittany on what they've done to invest back in the community, whether it's with Sporting or the NWSL team. Or the Royals, for that matter, since Patrick's also a minority owner there. I just really applaud their efforts and desire to get involved and support the community.
Well, I know we're through 10 games now of having fans back in every NFL venue. I'm just wondering, as part of the finance committee, how the season has gone based on what you guys projected maybe before the season began, and how the business has sort of impacted the team's finances so far this season.
So I would say as a whole the season has gone better than we projected. There was certainly uncertainty going into the season as to whether we would be able to have full buildings in every market, and at least to this point that's been possible, which that's been a positive. There are obviously additional costs that we first incurred last year with all the testing and protocols that are surrounding the COVID issue, and those haven't gone away. But I think as a whole, at least to this point, the league has fared better than we would have anticipated.
Is there an example that gives you as to why it's maybe better than you anticipated early in the year? Is there certain benchmarks that you thought maybe that were sort of uncertain when the season began?
Well, I think if you go back to the summer, there were still a number of NFL markets where the local government or the state government had not approved the team having a full building. And there was some question as to whether that would happen. We were pretty confident that we were going to be able to do it here. But there were other markets, in New York and California where we just didn't know how that was going to sort out. And fortunately, before the season got started in August, every team was green-lighted to have a full building.
One element on the field this year that's been a little bit more talked about is the emphasis on taunting penalties. I'm just curious what your perspective was like as those meetings were being had before the season, and how you feel like that's impacted the game, either for better or for worse.
Yeah, overall, I think the emphasis on the taunting has been a positive. It's one of those things where when you look at it from afar, it's an easy thing to support, not doing. The players as a whole, the players union have been very supportive of it. When it happens to you, when you get a flag on it on a week-to-week basis, you tend to have a little bit different perspective on it, and a lot of times don't feel that the call was appropriate. But that's the nature of probably a lot of NFL penalties as well.
As an organization, you made a major decision to go and get Orlando Brown ahead of what was the season, and Tyrann Mathieu is still ongoing, and that's going to be a big decision this offseason. Just how ongoing are those discussions with Brett as to the plan there, or is that something you guys say, we're going to leave till the next offseason?
Well, first of all, we've been delighted to have Orlando part of the organization. I mean, really, he and his offensive line teammates have done a great job of really rebuilding what was a weakness for us at the end of last year. So we're very happy and glad about that decision. At this point, you really put contract issues on the back burner. Those will be things that will get taken care of in the offseason.
Clark, with that said, you and Brett both said during the summer that you wanted to sign Tyron to an extension. Have those plans changed, or do you still intend to at least investigate it and at least try to get something done there?
Yeah, those plans haven't changed at all. It was something that we discussed with Tyron and his representative in the offseason before we started playing regular season games. But really, once we got into the season, it's really best for both parties to wait to the end of the year. And we would obviously love to have Tyron back, not only for his play on the field, but his leadership as well.
Clark, there's this ongoing case in St. Louis, of course, with them relocating. I understand because it's ongoing, that probably limits your ability to comment, but I have to ask the question anyway. Do you have any comment on what's going on there?
Unfortunately, I can't comment on it because it's active litigation, so I apologize.
Clark Euler, you spoke a bit about this in the context of Coach Reed, but on a wider scale, what can you say about the resiliency of this year's team? Obviously, quite a standard has been set, but to battle back from some struggles early on to where they are now, what can you say about that?
Yeah, well, every NFL season is going to be different. Obviously, we had the experience last year where we won almost every regular season game, with the exception of an early game against the Raiders and then the last game where we didn't play the starters. And so going into the season, I think that was the expectation that we'd do it again. Well, it just doesn't work that way in the National Football League. There's too much parity. The teams are too good, and every season is going to have its ups and downs. And we're lucky to have a very resilient group of players, starting with our team leaders, Tyrann Mathieu, who we talked about, Patrick on the offense, Travis Kelce, and then the coaching staff. I think they've played a key role in sort of keeping the group together, keeping them focused on the task at hand. And I think they told the guys that, look, if we just keep working on it, keep getting better every week, it's going to turn our way. And we've started to see that in recent weeks.
We'll go last two. We'll go Nate and then Adam.
Clark, it's been widely known that Roger Goodell at some point will be in negotiation with television deals upcoming with the league in terms of how that might project the future of the NFL's business. I'm just wondering, when you say that the league has done better than you expected at this point financially, how do you think the TV negotiations will go, and how much do you think that may impact the coming years, whether it relates to the Chiefs in terms of what you guys can operate with the salary cap and as the league as a whole?
The network negotiations are an ongoing process, although many of the packages were negotiated earlier this year. Now, they don't kick in, the new packages don't kick in until 2023 for the most part. Next year's the last year of the old deal. So a lot of that work's already been done, but there's still a few out there that are yet to be done. And I think the league is just very fortunate to continue to have a unique place from a media standpoint. When you look at network television, the ratings for almost everything, including a lot of other sports, are going down, and the NFL has been able to weather that and actually has grown its fan base watching the league on TV. The same thing from a digital standpoint. There's been tremendous growth in fans consuming NFL content digitally, so that's a new opportunity, and that's part of some of those packages. So it's a key part to the business. I think one of the great things about this season, not speaking from a Chiefs standpoint, is how competitive so many of the games have been. Just turning on the games on the weekend or on Monday or Thursday, there have been so many close games that have either gone to overtime or almost gone to overtime, and that's made for very compelling TV.
Last one, Adam.
Clark, Pat, as you know, has bought into Sporting Kansas City, bought into the Royals. He's talked about maybe getting into ownership once his playing days are over. Has he asked you any questions? Has he tried to pick your brain, for lack of a better term, about what it's like to be a pro sports owner?
He hasn't, but I know he'll be a tremendous owner. both in the role that he has with sporting the Royals at this point, but also if he chose to do something bigger after his playing career is over. I know he'll be a fantastic owner. We know he's a very quick learner. I just hope that we're talking about this 25 years from now.
How do you know, though? How do you know what, other than he's a quick learner, how do you know what tells you that he's going to be a good owner someday?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things we've seen in Patrick in his young career in the NFL is what a tremendous leader he is, right? And how well he works with different groups of people. And that's a quality that I think will serve him well if he chooses to get into pro sports ownership or any kind of business endeavors down the road. I think that'll be a great asset for him.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks.